Every one of us has experienced some degree of trauma, heartache, or rejection as children. Now, often these events had a profound impact on our self-image and our attitude. So to cope at that young age, many of us created this alternate reality, so to speak. We had imaginary friends, we had daydreams, we had fantasies, etc. Unfortunately, many of these early traumas left us with this "I'm not worthy" attitude, which led to a series of less than desirable actions and decisions. And these decisions and actions just kept repeating themselves. It's like Michael Corleone says in The Godfather 3, just when I'm out, they pull me back in. Can we change these patterns? Can we find joy? Well, we're about to find out. My name is Frank Zaccari. This is Life Altering Events Near-Death Experience, and my guest today is Cathleen Elle, who has experienced more than her share of trauma. Let me tell you something about her before I bring her in. She is a 3-time #1 international best-selling author. She is a transformational speaker, success coach, master healer, and the creator of the Elegy Healing System, which we're going to discuss in more depth in a little bit. Let's get right to her story because, ladies and gentlemen, this is an amazing woman. Kathleen, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Hello, Frank. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. When you and I first talked, I mean, I listened to your story and my eyes were just like, oh my God. Give us an overview of your background, where you grew up, things that you experienced, and the impact that it had on you.
Sure. So I was born to an abusive alcoholic dad. And at a very young age, I experienced that trauma. When my mom was actually pregnant for me, she lost her only son to SIDS. And so I experienced trauma even in the womb. And, as a child, I experienced sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and all of that, including, my birth father shooting at us at 3 or 4 year old. You lose, the specific time, but he actually shot at us when I was 3 or 4 years old. And that particular event actually, it was a very significant event in my life because that event created a story in my being that I was unworthy, I was unlovable, and I started to follow that pattern. And fortunately, I had a stepdad later on in life that adopted me. And so I had a great role model in that way. But my early childhood created a life of pain. It proceeded to have bullying in it and, multiple relationships and all kinds of this turmoil in my life. And I like to say that I have like a life of like a strawberry rhubarb pie. There's all kinds of bitterness in it, but there's a little sweet in it as well, because I ultimately had some wonderful things happen in my life as well.
Now, at one point when we spoke, you told me you're going through all this trauma, but you said, there's got to be something better. I'm going to make this better. So what happened? It's an amazing story.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This morning when I was preparing for this, in my meditation, the experience when I was, how old was I? I was 6 or 7 years old, maybe 8 years old. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I had appendicitis and I went to school. And I didn't tell anybody. I was in 3rd grade, so I was 8 years old. So I went to school. I didn't tell anybody I was sick because I was afraid to tell my mom that I was sick because there was all kinds of turmoil. Every time something happened, there was abuse that occurred. And I remember the bus driver at that time. Now, this wouldn't happen today, but he got to my house and I was sleeping in the seat and he kept calling my name apparently, and I didn't respond. And so he turned the bus off and carried me into the house. And actually this morning during my meditation, I realized, did the bus driver actually carry me in, or was that one of my guides that actually carried me in? I don't know which, but that was, and then I apologized for being ill to my mother when I was in the emergency room. They said that my appendix was about ready to burst, that I needed to go into emergency surgery. And I remember being wheeled into the emergency room and looking at my mom and said, "I'm sorry, I'm sick." And after that event, there was another blow up where my father became very abusive. And I remember hiding in the corner thinking, and this thought came to me saying, there's got to be something more to life than this. And so that early thought, I think, was a message. I know today was a message from the higher beings, my guides, saying, there is more for you. There's lots that you're going to experience in between, but there is more for you. And so that was a driving force for me of saying, I'm going to make something more of myself. So I created a pattern of doing, succeeding. I became a legislator before I was 30, before I even had a college degree. I worked for the governor for 7 years. I was a legislator for 8 years, worked for the governor for 7 years. And then I became a lobbyist. So I had a lot of good things happen, but each time that I succeeded, each time I was seeking on the outside to be approved, to be lovable, to be worthy enough. And every time that I succeeded, even as a graduate of college, while I was working for the governor, it still wasn't enough. I still wasn't enough in my mind, in my body. And so I continued to strive. So good things came from that experience, which we can talk more about, ultimately the catalyst that changed my life forever.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that there was more to life than what I experienced. And there was just a driving force within me. And I don't know what it was. I do today, but I didn't know what it was at that time.
Right. So you're having this massive success professionally.
Yeah.
You become a single parent, which is always a challenge. I've been there.
Yeah.
But life is going well to the outside world. Okay. Then 2010, everything fell apart. What happened in 2010?
In 2010, I'm just going to step back a little. My children's dad, I had 2 children, Ashley and Logan. Ashley was the oldest, and my children's dad and I completed our marriage when they were 5 and 6 years old. And it was during my first term as a legislator. Cool. So, so I spent a number of years, all of their growing years, as a single parent. And in 2019, I was sitting in a board meeting where I was the CEO of the largest commercial construction association in the state of Vermont. And we were determining what direction we were heading in. And a friend came and she informed me that my son had taken his life. And at the age of 19, he had died by suicide. And not only did he die by suicide, he died when he was angry at me. And he actually wrote a note saying he didn't want me at his service. So it shattered me. It shattered me. And life was no longer the same after that. What mattered before no longer mattered.
I can imagine. I mean, I can't imagine. That has to be the most devastating thing that can occur ever. Mm-hmm. So as you're coping with the death of your son, you felt this something again calling you. There was something driving you. What was that?
Well, I have to say that at that moment, nothing was driving me. What was driving me is how could I die too? Because my daughter, Ashley, was in college. I was on my own in Vermont. She was 1,000 miles away. And I just really felt isolated and alone. And I felt so full of pain and guilt and shame, because if I were this success in society, how could I not be the person to save my son? He struggled throughout a lot of his life with challenges. Like, he had mental health challenges, and we did the best we could with what we knew, and it didn't help. And so when I was lying on his grave about 3 to 4 months after he transitioned, I was lying on his grave, and I was begging, pleading, wishing whoever, whatever took my son's life, please take me too. I can't do this anymore. My body was full of pain. My heart, I couldn't breathe. My lungs, I couldn't breathe. My heart felt like it was in a vice grip, just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And I just wanted to die. And then like nothing was clear to me until that point, until the point where I heard this message from above out of nowhere say, if this happened in your life, then you're meant to do something with it. So now do it. And so I had at that moment that clarity of like, oh my gosh, I have the voice, I have the contacts, I know the media outlets, I can become the voice of suicide prevention, of suicide awareness, and how you speak about suicide, because people still speak about suicide as committing a crime. You know, people talk about suicide as committing suicide. That is not what has happened. More than 90% of those who have died by suicide either have a diagnosed or an undiagnosed mental illness. And so I educate people to speak of suicide as if they died by suicide, took their lives, or completed suicide. It's just like cancer or diabetes. It's an illness. And so I started to speak out about that. And as I started to speak out about that publicly, every single time I went on a radio show, every time I was live on a TV show, I did well doing that because I have been programmed. You know, some of the experiences I've had prepared me for the moment. I didn't know that at that time, but I was able to step up and perform. And as soon as it was over, I was out. I was full of pain again. I felt like I was re-experiencing all over 10 times over for days and weeks at a time, and up and do it again shortly afterwards. But because I was committed, if this happened I just knew the signs that I was getting. I knew if this happened, I was definitely my life. It was a near-death experience for me in many ways. I didn't die and go across the bridge or see the light. What I did see is a light. Like I felt and I heard the words, if this happened in your life, you're meant to do something with it. So it started to change the trajectory of my life. And about a year after Logan's transition, after I went to this conference, suicide conference, and all of these data, all I could see was the data of how I should have seen my son's illness and I should have prevented it. So I loaded up the guilt even more and the shame even more because I should have done something different. And the fact is, we do the best that we can with what we have. And with all the love in our heart. And so it was then that I decided to step in my healing journey. And that's when everything started to change for me.
One of the things you said to me was, there came this realization that the physical body is gone, but the spirit and the energy is still there, and that you started to tap into the energy to heal. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I say that Logan transitioned now. I don't believe he died in any form, shape, or way. What did die is the physical presence. And what continues to expand and grow and connect with me is the energetic presence. And the reason why that energy is so strong for me today is that I started to work through my pain that I didn't the pain of the loss of the physical presence and all of our events that occurred in our life. And then about 5 years in, I was still feeling, pretty heavy. And I'm like, what is happening here? I was talking to my cognitive thought therapist and I was like, what is happening here? I'm doing everything right. I'm eating healthy. I'm exercising. I'm working through my grief and I still feel like crap. I didn't use the word crap, but I'll use it here. We did this little cognitive test that she suggested to do. And what really came out is that I was still in post-traumatic stress from my early childhood experiences. And so I started a 12 to 15-week a post-traumatic stress therapy that assisted me in reshaping my stories around my early childhood trauma, the trauma that I didn't realize had stopped me. And so I go into all of that because eventually I became a master energy healer and started to work with ayahuasca and different shamanic practices that helped me remove one layer at a time, remove 4 layers at a time at times from my heart. So where I actually started to realize that I had a light within me that was connected to the light of the divine, of Logan, of guides, and I was being guided and I was getting messages. And then I started to realize that I had the ability to assist people in their healing through channeling, being the vessel of energy healing and being the vessel of messages for them. So I started to be able to see, feel, hear, know where other people are holding pain in their body, and I could actually help them remove it. And so I, being the vessel and the ability to be the channel between the two, but I get to help people through that. And so the pearl within the oyster here is, so many pearls within the oyster, is that I realized that I had light that I was seeking on the outside to fill from someone else that I never realized. And that continued to re-victimize myself over and over and over again, that pattern of unworthiness from a very early childhood trauma. And it also gave me the ability to really connect with my son and know the light that's there and to believe. Now, this may be a stretch for some, but I believe we have contracts with people that are in our lives today. We create contracts from above that are in our lives in the human form. So where they can help us grow. They can help us on our trajectory of life. And Logan's purpose in my life was to help me open up so where we could help millions of people to move through their healing journey.
Wow. Wow. I read something you had you've written in it, and you've got 3 best-selling books sitting behind you right there, that people choose to suffer. They choose to suffer. And that was the optimal word for me, choose, particularly after an unexpected loss or some hidden trauma. And then your elegy healing system is what can help evolve that. Explain how that works.
Yeah. So there is pain and grief. I think I might have even mentioned this earlier, but there is pain and grief. There is pain in the loss of the physical presence. That is grief. That is painful. It is challenging, especially if you've had complicated relationships throughout the time of your life. So we have to move through that pain and experience that pain. What we don't have to do is sit in the suffering. Suffering is the cause of us judging ourselves, of judging others, of those thoughts of, I should have done something different. I could have done something different. If only I'd have done something different. Now, just all the what ifs and if onlys and the how you could have been different in your life. So it causes more suffering. So it is beating ourselves up and judging ourselves and judging others, but it really comes back to judging ourselves. The suffering can be preventable. We don't have to sit in suffering for the rest of our lives. Where the suffering comes from is the fear of actually facing the pain, walking through that pain, so where you can feel the joy and love on the other side of that. That fear comes from, if I feel joy, then my loved one's going to think I didn't care about them. If I feel joy, then people are going to judge me because I actually am happy. If I feel joy, then I'm not going to remember my loved one, which none of that is true. So the fear has a hold over you to prevent you from actually feeling what we're meant to feel to begin with. That is the love that we are, the light that we are, and the light that is all around us.
In many cases, that fear results in physical pain that we don't associate, like pain in the shoulder, is that right?
That is very true. You know, people are quick to go to the doctors to get medicine, and I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor, so I'm just going to preference what I have to say about that. But we are quick to jump to mask our pain, to mask our what we're experiencing in our body. Our body is a form of information for us. Our body is talking to us all the time. And so when we have a pain in our shoulder, or we have a pain in our neck, or our stomach is churning, I would invite people to go within that pain and just sit with it and hold it and say, where is this truly coming from? Because there's information within that pain that could be connected to a trauma within this lifetime, or a parent's trauma, or a grandparent's trauma, or even another lifetime. It could be connected all the way back. And if you work through the pain that's in your body, then you're no longer carrying it forward or giving it to your children. You're actually preventing that pain from happening. So illnesses come from my perspective, a lot of illnesses come from our unresolved challenges in our life, unresolved issues, the unresolved feelings of ourself that is not in alignment with what our being is supposed to be, what our heart's calling is. We are all divine light. We are all source. Every one of us are source. Every one of us has the ability to connect energetically. So when we're in alignment with the source, which is love, then there's less pain, there's less anxiety, there's less depression. And when we're not in alignment, that's when all of that stuff starts to come up, because they're messages for us to deal with something. They're messages for us to walk through the pain that we're holding, that either we know or we don't know what the pain is.
Mm-hmm. I've had some conversations with some medical doctors in the past, and while there are scientists and everything has to be a fact-based, I'm hearing more and more saying that emotion and the ability to first off feel emotion and then address emotion has a great deal to do with healing.
Oh, it definitely does. Emotion is energy in motion. That's what it is. And a lot of people put labels on when we feel angry or sad or unworthy or scared. We put labels on that, those as being bad emotions. So we push them aside. Society has done that. And what they are is anger and excitement are the same feeling in your body. There's just a different story around it. Mm-hmm. So when we're never always in one, it's energy in motion. And so if we allow ourselves to feel the anger, be with it, don't avoid it, don't mask it, whether it's prescription or otherwise, drugs, alcohol, overworking, overexercising, overeating, undereating, whatever it is, the excessiveness of that. I'll give you my own example, Frank, is that I overworked, I overachieved. And I'm not complaining, because it's really served me well today as I look back, like everything that's happened in my life, including the abuse that I experienced as a child. Had I not experienced that abuse as a child, there's no way that I would have survived the suicide of my son. I would not have had the strength to do so. And had I not been a legislator to learn how to speak publicly and to be confident with advocating for what I believe, then I wouldn't have done what I've done to this point. And all of that would have created the courage for me to be able to give up my political career, all the people that I knew, and move 1,000 miles away and start a healing business. Like, I would have never done that. And then I wouldn't have been here sitting with you. So everything that occurs in our life is part of our journey. And yet we can create a different journey as we move forward if we're willing to walk through the journey of healing.
It's perfect. I've heard so many times people like yourself saying there are no random acts.
No, it's all synchronistic.
Everything occurred if you're paying attention for you to follow a path.
Well, it's true. So my connection with you, Frank, is you posted on some group that I was in. I watched the video. I'm like, oh, that is really good. I'd love to be on Frank's show. So I reached out to you and said, hey, I have a story. And here we are today, again, assisting thousands of people, millions of people eventually. You don't know what this one interview will do for someone.
Absolutely. Earlier, we said that the physical presence goes away, but the spirit and the energy maintains itself. And you have something with your son where there's this connection, and you told me this story. Explain that story.
Oh, it's a beautiful connection. It started shortly after. I mean, it's always been there, and I knew at one point I asked my son in the store before he transitioned, I'm like, have you ever thought about suicide? And he goes, how'd you know about that? And I'm like, I just knew, Logan. Like, I just knew. And then I didn't know what it was. But today I know that I was being guided. And I've always had that connection with him. I always have. And after he transitioned, just weeks after, I was sitting in his bed and I was playing cribbage on the computer or on the phone. I can't remember which, because that's what we used to play. We used to play cribbage. And we had two cats, Paris and Hilton.
Great names.
Yeah. One was his sister's and one was his. And they were always in his room, but Hilton was his cat. And he was sitting at the threshold of the door. He would not cross over. And he kept looking up into the air and his head was tilting and he just kept, and then he started to cry and he wouldn't come in. I'm like, so then I put the computer away and I'm like, come on in, Hilton, it's okay. And all of a sudden, I just lay there and watched. And all of a sudden he jumps high into the air with his front claws out and cries out loud like he was jumping onto Logan's body. And I turned around and, kind of cradled myself on my side. And then suddenly I felt Logan's energetic body spoon me. So along my whole, and his arm comes across my body. And of course I cried like a baby because it was so touching and so important for me to feel that. And I just knew everything was going to be okay. Like I knew eventually everything was going to be okay because his energy was there. So then I started to listen and watch and be aware of the signs. I'd be thinking about Logan driving down the road and say, Logan, will you please give me a sign that you're here? And then the song would come on, Sweet Escape. Now the song "Sweet Escape" by Gwen Stefani.
Yeah.
We got videos of him, playing around and being quirky about "Sweet Escape."
Mm-hmm.
And like, how ironic that the song "Sweet Escape" was the song that he used to play to, and that song would come on. So I started to listen, and then I started to be guided by him, and I would start asking, so Logan, please show me what I need to know. And he would about any particular situation, any sign would come. So I started to trust that. And then as I was writing the book Shattered Together, and the book cover wasn't coming together. And 8 days before the launch date, 10 days, I can't remember, but it was within 2 weeks of the launch date, we still didn't have a book cover because I knew what was being created was not what was supposed to be on the front cover. So I go to bed and I say, Logan, please, I know you want a specific cover on this book. Please give me the specific cover you want because we're getting pretty close. And if you want this to be launched in October, we need to do this. Like, I need your help. So please, I go to bed and I wake up with the complete cover of Shattered Together, just as it is. The full design was there. And what's so important about the cover of Shattered Together is, those who can't see it, is there's a heart on the front and it looks like a lightning bolt down the middle of the heart. Well, actually the lightning bolt is the side profile of Logan's face.
Wow.
Exactly. And then as people look at it, they've come back to me and said, there's all kinds of messages in here. There's many layers in this cover. And what's beautiful about all the times that all the different layers that I'd gone through on the front cover is that those layers wouldn't be here in this book if I didn't wait for the message to be clear. There's an angel to the side. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's an angel over here on the side.
Yeah. There's
God's hands underneath. It's the lightning bolt. It's the divine source energy going right down through the heart. There's so many messages that each person picks up a different message from the front cover of the book. So there, I am always being guided. He is my partner in what I do. And I trust that not only he, but the source energy is what's helping me to be following my heart's calling, to be the service the way that I am.
I've heard other parents of children who have passed transition say that oftentimes there's a number that seems to be this connection. What was your number?
Number 33. So Logan's sport number was number 33. So his jersey was always 33. He played a lot of basketball. And shortly after his transition, he one of his teams not his teams, actually one of the baseball teams, and the coach of the baseball team put number 33 on their hat, and LV 33. And I would be thinking of him. I'd be driving down the road, and all of a sudden 33 would pop up on someone's license plate. Some car would pull in front of me, and there it is, 33. I'm like, oh, thank you, Logan. Thank you for letting me know that you're here. 33 pops up all the time. My next book is a collaborative book called Living After Loss, and there's going to be 33 featured authors in it. Mm-hmm. That really have the opportunity to share their story like I'm sharing mine, whether it's death after, sudden death or
trauma.
Trauma, anything at all, any event, near-death experiences, that's what I was trying to get to. The near-death experiences, any of that has altered their life for the better. And I believe, even though it's been painful, and I really put myself through a lot of suffering, and it is still challenging at times to know that his physical presence isn't here. We're humans. We're going to experience that, especially his birthday. It's a big day for me because it's the day that he came into this world to bless us. So his human presence, that's a big day for me. Mother's Day, we're coming up on Mother's Day. That's another big day for me. And I allow those emotions to flow through now because I know they no longer have a hold over me. I don't have to feel like I am being pulled into the ocean and just drowning. I can float to the top when it's, just ride the waves. Just ride the waves.
Wow. So Kathleen, after all you've been through, and you've been through a lot, and all that you've discovered, what are the last words and thoughts you want to leave with the viewers around the world today?
You don't have to suffer. You don't deserve to suffer. You're not meant to be here to suffer. You're meant to be here to shine the light that you are. We all have a purpose. Every one of us have a purpose. Not everybody has to be in the public eye like I'm choosing to be. Your purpose could be, serving at a homeless shelter. Whatever your purpose is, it. Your heart's calling you. So step into the fear, walk through it, and feel the joy and love and compassion and the freedom that you can get by no longer letting that pain hold you.
And if you want any more depth, the 3 books that are sitting behind Kathleen, buy them, get them. It will inspire you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we said, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Kathleen one more time for sharing this incredible story on creating a new life. Yes, it can be done. After her life fell apart, she created a new life, and she's making a difference in thousands and thousands of people's lives. And we can do that too. Now, no matter what life throws at you, ladies and gentlemen, and as you just heard, it can throw a lot at you. Please do 3 things. Look up, get up, and never, ever give up. Pick up the pieces, start moving forward. Better times and better people will come into your life. And you may think it's random, like a message I got from Kathleen, but it's not. Better people will come into your life. If you want more information about Kathleen, you can contact me at my website or her on her website. If you send it to me, I'll make sure it gets to her. You can see this show on ROKU TV or on my YouTube page, Frank Zaccari. And I will send links to Kathleen, and she'll post it all the places that she puts out her information. If you use the YouTube channel, please subscribe. Now, let me leave you with this as I do every week. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Kathleen showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week. We look into another life-altering event. Kathleen, thank you one more time.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's been a pleasure to be here with you.